In times of trauma and adversity, we must create space for connection by sharing a story of hope. Welcome to Humans of Hope Inspiring Stories, hosted by Kerry Atherton. This podcast shares inspiring stories of individuals who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger, offering hope and resilience to listeners all over the world. Join Kerry, the founder of Stories of Hope Worldwide, every week to hear these remarkable journeys and find the strength to overcome your adversity. Now, let's listen in to this week's conversation.
Welcome to another episode. Today's guest, Ben, and I have connected over a topic which is something that many people will relate to, and that's mental health. Maybe you're needing some inspiration today. Maybe you're needing hope. Maybe you're doing fine and you have family members or mates that are going through a hard time. Or maybe you're someone who just cares about other people and you would love some strategies and insight on how to make lives better for others. Ben, welcome.
Hey, Kerry, good to be here.
And something that I love that you talk about is the healing power of sports.
Absolutely.
That really resonated with me because my family, well, the guys in my family are absolute sports maniacs, mainly footy and cricket, but it's just 24/7, you know, and they just seem very happy after they've watched it. But you've got a huge story, I read. We're going to talk about healing today. We're going to talk about the dark times. We're going to talk about the healing power of sport. We're going to talk about hope. And we're also going to talk about overcoming. So you're a returned veteran.
Correct.
A dad, a hubby,
Yes.
an all-round good Australian bloke. And you also are a 2 times gold medal winner of the Invictus Games. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Can you tell us a bit about the Invictus Games? Because I know a lot about it because I've watched a lot of documentaries and I was crying when I watched them.
Oh, who wasn't?
Oh, I know. But a lot of people out there don't know what the Invictus Games are. So can you please give us some insight?
Yeah, when I first heard about the Invictus Games, I was introduced to it as just a little competition that a few of my mates who had injuries and wounds, veterans could get involved in. And you could just compete with each other, and it would be a nice way of just getting active again. As I went down the path of selection for the Invictus Games, started realising that this was bigger than I had initially thought. And it was described to us in a media brief that the Invictus Games was an international multi-sport event for wounded, injured and ill veterans, blah, blah, blah. And my head was like, okay. It wasn't until I arrived at Sydney Olympic Park in 2018 and stood there and saw the wave of Team United States. You had Team Canada, Team UK, that you realise, wow, this is like an Olympic Games for wounded veterans.
Incredible.
It was a week that I didn't expect. Being able to share that experience with so many special people, including my family, was something that I will never forget. And I can only describe it in terms of a week full of tears, goosebumps and hugs. It was tremendous.
And you really talk about the healing power of connection too, and that's something that we both share. We've seen how connection really heals a person's heart and helps heal them from their difficult times. And I think the whole thing with that is knowing that you're not alone in your struggles. And I suppose everyone at those Invictus Games had been through similar trials to you.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there were 72 Australians in the Australian team that represented a couple of hundred people that had tried out for that team, and the thousands of people that were wounded and weren't even able to trial out for that. Overall, there were 500 veterans from around the world that competed in those games, each of them supported by family and loved ones. The healing effect of that connection with so many people was just, in many cases, overwhelming. It was just tremendous. It shone a light on a real issue, but it also shone a light on the unconquerable human spirit and the way that people can rise up and overcome adversity. It was tremendous.
That's great. And you have overcome a lot of adversity in your life. And when I was reading about you, you shared that not so many years ago, I think it was just about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, that you woke up in the state of feeling like you were in the valley of the shadow of death. And I'm wondering if
Yeah.
you can take us back to maybe even what had happened before that to lead you to that point. But if you can share a bit about that with us, because there's a lot of people out there. I know, from all my studies that 1 in 4 people were battling with mental health prior to COVID. And
Right.
since COVID, those numbers to all the hotlines such as Lifeline, which I know made a big difference in your life, have doubled.
Yeah.
So to all those people out there, if you can paint a bit of a picture for us of what was going on, what led to that time, and how you came out.
Right. A little bit of unpacking there. The incident what you're referring to there is it was Australia Day 2015,
Right.
and I woke up from a night terror to find myself really in a living nightmare, and I was trying to work out how I got there. I was in hospital. I had been diagnosed with PTSD, depression, anxiety, and the reason I was in hospital that day is I'd just broken my neck and back in a mountain bike accident.
Right.
So here I was in hospital, physically and just mentally shattered, unable to move. I'd gone through a period of my life of thinking about taking my own life over and over. And just when I was starting to heal and move through that, I felt like my life was all of a sudden almost taken away.
Yeah.
And the doctor, I remember saying, big fella, do not move. If you move, you could be a quadriplegic or die.
Yeah.
And just thinking, how did I get here? Like like you mentioned, a dad and husband. I've got beautiful kids. I've got a loving wife, got a house. I've got a job. I mean, it all looks good. How did I get here? And that story started about 20 years earlier, back when I went to East Timor as an army officer back in 1999. And that experience was a highlight of my military career. But when I came back home, although my boots were back on Australian soil, my mind was still somewhere else. I didn't realise that I'd come back with psychological scars. It wasn't a thing we spoke about 20 years ago.
No.
We didn't talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we talked about it in terms of the Vietnam veterans having PTSD and issues, but, as a young 23, 24-year-old, it just wasn't thought about.
Yeah.
And so that went unnoticed or under the radar to everyone except my wife for about 10 or 15 years. And with that came a pattern of challenging thoughts and behaviours that really took me down a dark path. And I kept thinking that, oh, no, that's all right. I'll just get fit and healthy again and get myself back on top. But then I'd gradually slip down the other side. And it reached a point where I was unable to look after myself anymore. And my wife had to take me to hospital. And I was very fortunate to be surrounded by supportive family, but also professionals who were able to assist me, understanding and accepting what was happening in my life and to get the support that I needed. But then as I was getting that support, I ended up spending about a year in a mental health hospital. And every time I kept trying to get out and come home, I'd end up back in.
Wow.
I liken that period to every time I stepped out, I was like staring into the sun, and I could only hold my gaze on life for so long before I needed to go back. And gradually was able to come out. And I remember coming home for Christmas and getting a mountain bike. And then a couple of weeks later, slipped off, turning a corner, slipped off a footbridge, went into a creek line, face first into a rock, and snapped my neck in 2 places, my back in a few places, and then ended up back in hospital again. So I'd really hit rock bottom at that point, Kerry.
Gosh, yes, absolutely. And we have a friend who has shared his story who also had a mountain bike accident and he sustained a traumatic brain injury, and he's been living with that ever since. So I have some sense of what you're talking about here, only that he wasn't also battling the mental health component and the PTSD prior to that. So that is just real triple whammy, isn't it?
Yeah, it was quite an unfortunate series of events that led to that point, but it was a real turning point.
So you're lying
Just
there
like-
in the depths of absolute darkness and despair.
Yeah.
And what are you thinking at that time? Did you think that you could come out of this? Did you think that there was life on the other side, or had you totally lost hope?
I think hope for me at that point was a bit too far away. I was very much trying to work out where I was at that time, that single moment. I was really suffering at that point, and I wanted to find some relief to that suffering. And I drew on a couple of things. I remember Mum saying to me, just, breathe. That's the only thing you can do is just, you have control of your breath at the moment. So just breathe
Wow.
and ask to be granted grace. And I remember just closing my eyes and praying to whoever the gods may be, reaching out to Mother Earth, to the divine spirit, to God, to whoever would hear me, and just say, please
Anyone.
grant this little boy grace. I need it right now. And it was in that moment that I felt myself slip or fall back into what I call, I don't know, the abyss or the void or darkness. It was just like a falling away sensation. And it was in that moment that I remember looking out and seeing a bright light and walking towards that. And but this could have been a dream. I don't know. It was an experience and one which held significant meaning to me. But as I got closer to that light, it was like a soft glow. And I had this sensation that glow was me. And very much like starting a small fire, just using your breath to gently nurture that glow, not too much to avoid putting the candle out, just gently breathing on it to make the spark grow a bit brighter. And I just held that image in my mind and gently nurtured that flame. And with that came a number of images and thoughts of, if I wasn't here right now, where would I be? And what would I be doing? What am I attached to? What is my, not so much purpose or raison d'etre, it's more rather, why would I go on? Why would I go? Why would I go back? And there was just a number of little thoughts that came through. Everything from, it'd be really nice just to touch grass again. It'd be nice to sit and see the birds come up in the sky. I thought about what it'd be like to be able to use my arms again and just hug my kids. That'd be really something I'd like to do again. Even pictured kissing my wife just on the side of her face here. But imagine if I could do that again. That I can really sense that.
Yeah.
Even went so far as thinking, wouldn't it be good to get in a rowing boat again at 5 o'clock in the morning and watch the sun come up over the hills and the lake and see a new day dawn. And it was just a realization that I still wanted to have a human experience. I still wanted to experience the world in a way that you can't when you're no longer alive. And I thought, well, every moment that I have from now on, I would cherish, regardless of what happens to my sensory capacity. I'll just use whatever senses I have left to try to enjoy every moment I have left until it's gone, because there's a realization was that life is so fleeting and that this is just an opportunity to experience it. And I wasn't ready to give that up. Yeah, thought it'd be fun to go back, and I was very lucky that I was able to.
What do you say to the person, but particularly I do a lot of work with men and mental health. And
Right.
yeah, and what the lie men have been sold about masculinity, society, the media, about how a man should be, how a man should deal with emotions, what's been role modeled to them, whether that is you've got to be tough, you've got to suck it up, you can't talk, you can't cry, all that type of stuff. I think the bravest thing a guy can do is what you've done and speak up, share their story, be able to cry, be able to be in touch, with that within them that is really hurting, and be able to express that. But a lot of men don't know how to do that because they've never been shown. And I was just wondering what you would say to any man that's watching this that has maybe lost their career, especially after COVID, lost their job, if they've lost their identity because their identity's been wrapped up in being the provider for their home or being the one that achieves and closes the sale, or What would you say to that guy that's lost that?
Well, first of all, sorry, mate. You know, just keep going and realizing that you can get through it. And there's people out there that have been in similar situations where life brings you down to your knees. And sometimes it's hard for you to do it yourself to get back up, and you need to reach out to those around you who love and support you to help lift you back up, and that's okay. You hear a lot of stories of people saying, it was really hard and I just did it by myself, and I am an example of, strength and fortitude and blah, blah, blah. And I love those stories, but that wasn't my experience.
Yeah.
My experience was one where life brought me down to my knees, and I really needed other people around me to, share with me their courage and strength at times when I felt like mine was somewhat lacking. And
I'd love that. Yeah.
I just think for the men out there who live in an environment or a space where we're told to be tough and strong, maybe this was handed down from our fathers and their fathers in our culture. And I say our culture, but it's not always like this among men in different parts of the world. But uniquely within Australia, is that, toughen up, get a bit of calluses around your hands and drink a cup of cement and harden up, that sort of stuff. It's realizing that that's just a framework, and that doesn't necessarily help to solve every problem, and that your problem is unique to you and you need to look for a way to solve that. I love what Brene Brown has to say, though, about courage and vulnerability. And she talks about, and this really resonated with me and might hopefully resonate with a few of the men that you're talking to, is the courage. Core of the word courage comes from the Latin cor, which means heart. And what tends to happen is that in periods of stress or anxiety or the like, you tend to shut down and you start to close off those emotions to protect yourself. What I learned is that emotions aren't selective, and that if you try to cut down emotions such as sadness and anger, then you also shut down happiness and joy to the point where you close off your heart. And it is really important, as you mentioned earlier on, to make yourself vulnerable. Now, that's not easy, and it starts off with small steps, but open up your heart, and that takes courage to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And to say, I'm not doing well, I need help, and I don't know what is going on with me because I haven't experienced that before. I'm not even exactly sure what help I need. And sometimes if you can't find someone in your immediate space, then this is a perfect example why you'll call 13, 11, 14 and reach out to Lifeline, as I did, because they take these calls every day. And I rang them up and I just said, look, hey, g'day, I'm Ben. Not really sure why I'm calling, but what do you guys do? And they said, oh, look, Ben, that's okay. That's normally how the conversation begins. And I just felt myself explode and in tears and had no idea what was going on. I said, something's happened to me. I don't understand. Take that first step. And ask for a little bit of help, or look for some information to get that support. That would be, my recommendation.
I think that's really profound what you said to that person. Something's happened to me and I don't understand. That's the experience of so many people.
Yeah.
They're like, I used to be able to function at this level. I used to be able to do this. I used to be able to do that. And all of a sudden, something's happened and I don't understand.
Exactly. Like, I used to be able to sleep without drinking alcohol. I used to be able to have a conversation with my kids without shouting. And I used to be able to go through my day without feeling sadness and exhaustion. Now, I used to be able to do things, but for some reason, everything seems too heavy now. And I don't understand why that's happened.
Yeah.
Someone help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I was wondering was if you could share with us your self-care strategies, because once we get the help for mental health, if we don't look after ourselves, and we're triune beings really, is in the physical, the mental and the spiritual, if we don't look after all three parts, one part is going to unravel again.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think where it kept unraveling for me is I kept coming back to an environment that I hadn't changed. So I'd come back to old routines and patterns and then fall down again and have to go back to the hospital. I mean, bloody annoying stuff. So like, how do I get this right back here?
Yeah.
The first thing was critical to me was, in terms of self-care, was sleep. I lost the ability to have a good night's sleep. I had to work out and learn how to sleep. Sounds absolutely ridiculous, but I had to understand things such as how to go to bed with the intent of sleeping and having a good night's sleep, clearing, the space for a good night's sleep. And there's lots of information available out there. You just got to look for it. Up until that time, I didn't think there was a problem.
Yeah.
But I guess when I realised if I wanted to go to sleep without drinking alcohol, then I needed to find a different way of doing it. And then I learned a lot about sleep, and in that, just like 10, but is also breathing, the art of breathing. We just take that for granted as well. But I remember sitting down one day with a breathing specialist, because these people exist, and I realised that my breathing was like 2 to 3 times faster than what it should have been, which is just an example of the anxiety in my body.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to control my breathing, then to sleep. So they were 2 basic things that I work on straight away. And I think they underpin a lot of what then helped me get back. The next one was talk about humour as a part of that. I really like the way that Aussies just take the piss out of stuff, and it's really good to take it out of yourself too. Just when you're looking at your old miserable self in the mirror, just have a good laugh at yourself and go, come on, mate. I know you're having a crap day. You'll get through this. But it's just lightening that load just for a moment, just not trying to hang on to the seriousness of it all the time. And so looking for moments to share that humour, and not at anyone's expense, and doesn't have to be a guffaw. It can just be a quiet chuckle or even a nose snort. I don't know, just to inject something different into your life when life seems just a little bit heavy. The other part, which we mentioned earlier on, was then exercise has been critical for me.
Yeah.
I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. Exercise for me was just starting by walking outside of the house and looking up at the sky and around at the trees. The ability to do that after not having a broken neck and not being able to walk for a while there was a gift. I thought, if my exercise is walking out to the letterbox, then wow, that's a marathon in itself. And now it incrementally builds on itself, so that exercise has become a way of life for me. I use it in 2 parts. There's one part where I like to push myself in terms of competition, but there's a large part of it which is more nurturing and more gentle. So if I jump on a rowing machine for an hour, which sounds quite ridiculous, I do it with headphones on, but with a meditation on. And so I'm sitting on that machine, and although my heart rate might be up to around 80% for an hour, I will think about my breathing and meditating and just trying to remain calm. And I find myself quite relaxed and centered after that experience, and like I've done something good for my body at the same time. So there are a few little things. Overall, I think the biggest thing is just to try to stay present with life around me, with what my family and what my kids and the world around me, rather than dropping back into my head. And
dropping back into the past, regrets, or the what ifs of tomorrow is dangerous territory, isn't it?
I think so, but even more subtler than that, I think just dropping into thoughts.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can get caught up in your thoughts, and you move through thoughts, and you're so busy in your own thoughts, you forget about actually the world that's happening around you.
Yeah.
And so it's being present with the happening and being part of that all around you, rather than in the boring old space of thoughts, which can get a bit tedious after a while, especially when they start going over the same things. So, anyway, I don't know, Kerry. There's a few of my thoughts.
Great stuff. It's great stuff. It's going to help so many people, truly.
I hope so.
As we come to a close now, I've got two questions. Do you have a light bulb moment that changed your life? I know we've talked about a couple of things today, but is there a light bulb moment, that aha moment that really sticks out in your mind?
Back to the one that we discussed earlier, and that was that moment of slipping into the void and into the darkness, and realising it was only by being comfortable sitting in the darkness that I was able to see the light and rebuild a life back on that. I think that was quite key in my recovery and quite a big turning point for me.
And lastly, if you could give a message, what's your message for the world?
It changes depending on the mood I'm in.
Your positive message for the world. No, you seem like you're positive all the time now.
Look, just keep going. You're doing your best. Just keep going. You're doing your best. Love those around you. Stay connected with them and support them, because you never know when you're going to need their love, support, and connection.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much for today, Ben.
Thank you,
It's
Kerry.
such an honour talking to you, and you're just such an inspirational human, and I just loved everything that we talked about today.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thank you for listening to Humans of Hope Inspiring Stories with Kerry Atherton. If this conversation helped you, please consider sharing the podcast with a friend or leave a rating and review on your podcast player. Thank you to Matthew Bliss for podcast production and consultation, and to Kintsugi Heroes for making this podcast possible. If you'd like to find out more about Kerry Atherton, head to storiesofhope.com.au, where you can purchase her books or find out where her next event is taking place. Check the show notes for links and information about our guest in this episode. And remember, you don't have to walk your path alone.